Colt Gray, the 14-year-old shooter in the recent Georgia school shooting, of course, charged, is in custody, but now his father is as well. Colin Gray is his name. Earlier in the week on our feed on both YouTube and the podcast, we shared the video from the body cam of the police officers visiting the home of Colin and Colt Gray about a year ago, before the shooting actually took place, when there was rumors that Colt had made an online threat. A video that I think angers a lot of people. I'm sure, especially the parents of the victims, seeing as not a whole lot was done, and it ended up being a conversation about hunting. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor. This is interesting. This is in the wake of the Crumbley trial, where we saw those parents being charged and certainly getting some punishment for allowing their child to have access to these weapons. Now we see second degree charges against Colin Gray. Is this going to be the new norm going forward?
I really think that this is the emerging trend. For we've had these school shooting incidents in America happen over the course of decades. We've all been trying to find out, hey, what's the solution here? Well, one potential solution the government has decided on is to try to hold accountable sort of these peripheral actors who had some significant involvement, like the parents, to try to have some deterrent effect going forward for other folks who might find themselves in this kind of situation. I think we're going to see more and more of these types of prosecutions of parents in school shooting cases.
And that's great. I mean, it's an after effect of everything. It's something that we haven't done all to that large of an extent in the past. As we know, a lot of times punishments don't necessarily deter criminals. It's why we still have criminals, no matter what we do. But when it comes to something like this, uh, there's a lot to be said about how that was handled with the police early on, when the threat was made. And I get the anger, but at the same point, I'm guessing the police hands were tied. There's only so much an officer can do. Even if you really believe this kid is making these threats and he's lying about it, you can't just invade the home and start taking shit. Other steps need to be taken. Are we really missing the boat on how we're handling this stuff? We're starting to get somewhere on the back end, but again, it's all after the fact. The crime has to be committed before we can start doling out more punishments for other people that are involved in this. How did the failure? How did this all fail on the front end? And I guess why? What needs to be changed because of the failures of simply the logistics of our system and the rules of our system?
Yeah. Oh, it's a delicate issue, and when you look at this prior police contact that was, I think, like around a year before the school shooting or
Mhm.
so, what we're looking at allegedly the shooter had made some comment on Discord, that this like media platform that may have referenced some kind of school shooting. But the thing is, when the government's investigating it, they've got to look at what the allegations are, but they've also got to look at the Constitution and people, and there is a free speech right. And there's this doctrine called true threats, which essentially says that if you're going to try to prosecute someone for threats, you've got to have some evidence that they are credible and likely to be carried out, or something to that effect. And I think that the FBI went to the house, they talked with them, they talked with his dad, and they just didn't think they had enough at that time with some little post on the internet. Now, here we are a year later, and there's an absolute tragedy that's happened. What are the corrective measures that need to be made in that first instance? I don't have a lot of great answers, but certainly an issue that legal scholars are wrestling with.
You can't walk around an airport and say you have a bomb or that you're going to shoot a plane down or anything like that, whether you mean it as a true threat or not. You just can't do it. You will be arrested and you will be charged. Should there just be a no tolerance policy for this across the board? We don't give a shit if your threat is true or not, because only you truly know if it's a true threat. I mean, almost every single shooting that we have in our country, there are threats made online, and oftentimes not deemed to be credible until they actually take place. Uh, it would be quite a hefty load, but I mean, if you start treating everything as if they actually committed the crime by making the threat, I don't know. Might that curb things? Do we need to kind of go down that route of, look, you're making a threat like this, we are going to come at you. You can't go start threatening to kill the president or something online. And probably just flag this on YouTube. Or you can't just go make those threats without having the Secret Service come and visit you just to kind of check things out.
I think you make a great point that perhaps we need to distinguish between different contexts of threats. For example, the airport, like you said, a person saying they have a bomb in the airport, absolutely, the law enforcement's going to jump on that, arrest that person, probably charge them. Is that the same as someone saying in a bar that they're going to kill somebody or whatever? Perhaps there's distinguishing context here. The airport is a more serious issue where lives are at risk. There's been prior incidents. Same thing with schools. Perhaps in school shooting, or perhaps in the school shooting context, that threat could be looked at differently than somebody just popping off at a bar saying something.
Well, I mean, think about it for a second. I mean, look at the incidents of violence or horrible things happening at an airport versus a school. We have far more deaths in our schools than we do at the airport. I don't know. I can't think of any recent. I know it has happened in the past, but I don't know any time in the U.S. recently where anyone's gone into an airport and shot it up or anything like that. The last terrorist bombing that we had of a plane in the United States was 9/11 23 years ago. Um, and we've had how many hundreds of school shootings since that time? Yet we take the airport threat far more serious. Don't say it, can't do it. And of course, no one should do it. But when it comes to the schools with innocent little kids, it's like, well, they kind of said it. Maybe they mean it. Maybe they don't. I feel like our priorities are very messed up here in terms of reality and what we take seriously and what we don't.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I think perhaps a commonality between the airport and the school shooting context is the risk of mass casualty. And when there is that risk present, even if it hasn't happened for a long time, we got to take it super seriously. And when I'm flying, or going to the airport, I absolutely want them to take everything seriously, even if, thank heavens, there hasn't been such an incident. Where,
Sure.
looking at the school shooting context, that's even more justification to take those threats more seriously than perhaps some offhand remark in a completely different context, a work scenario or a bar, leisure scenario,
Mhm.
whatever.
And obviously, I mean, this is not intended to be an argument about gun control or anything like that. People can have guns. I'm not against that. I own guns. I don't really shoot, but they're there if the world ends and I need to defend myself. And I know people are there and they like to hunt, and that's fine. I'm from a culture where that goes on all the time. Um, but when I was a kid, I mean, I guess I had a good amount of responsible parents around us where the kids didn't just have access to the weapons. It was interesting watching that video of Colin Gray on the porch with the officers. And does he have access to the weapons? Well, yeah, he does. And I'll do something about it if the threat's credible. If not, yeah, you can have act like what is going on here where people feel that their children need to be indoctrinated into learning how to use an AR at the age of 8. And I mean, I get if you can go hunting, then let them have the gun while they are hunting. After that, it is locked back up. You do not have access to it. I know there are some laws in some states, but they've not been adopted in most. Is that another area where we really have to take a serious look at that? I don't know. Do we need to do spot checks? Do we need to do things like we're not taking your guns? But are you handling them safely? Are you handling them correctly? Almost like a DUI check, on an interstate on a very heavy drinking day like New Year's, where look, you kind of got a record over here, your kids kind of got a record. We may just show up every now and then to make sure that your guns are in a safe place. Or if you have a person in your home that has been diagnosed with something or is on the radar, sorry, you don't get guns anymore.
There are similar measures that have been instituted, not quite to that extent, but in Colorado, for example, we have this red flag law where I practice, and it essentially says if someone is you think is experiencing a mental health issue and has some danger with respect to guns, a person can report that, and it goes to the courts almost immediately, and the court decides whether to divest the individual accused of their firearms for a limited period of time. And so I think there are different options that other locales are considering. Certainly not a perfect solution. I think that allowing the government into people's homes to just kind of check up on them and their firearms, while it might be a preventative and safe measure, it's also potentially ripe for abuse. And so, where is that middle ground, and where do we get to a place where we don't have every few weeks the headlines of kids being shot dead at schools?
Let me ask you about the red flag law in Colorado and how it works. Obviously, I mean, one could want revenge on somebody and just report this person has a mental health problem and they have guns, and then how does it work? How in depth of a review do they do before deciding we got to make a little stop over here and take these guns from this person because they're a danger to themselves and others?
Well, it's a relatively new law, so it's still sort of, different judges are kind of handling it differently, interpreting it differently. But it's a pretty short period of time in terms of accusation to a judge ruling on whether to take somebody's guns away temporarily. And usually it's not like a full trial that happens or anything like that. It's usually a hearing where the accuser comes in and presents some information, and the judge essentially decides, hey, is there enough here to put a stop on this for the time being? And then after that, the accused gets a further opportunity to sort of present evidence saying, "Hey, I'm not a danger. I'm fine. I should be able to have my guns." But it's kind of a touch and go thing, and not something that's overly in depth or comprehensive.
Hmm. It's fascinating because we have all these sayings, obviously thoughts and prayers, which is just bullshit. But the see something, say something, which I also kind of feel is getting to be a bit bullshit. Because people did in this case. A lot of people saw something and said something. The part that's missing is do something. It's see something, say, okay, great. We all feel good. We said our part. We let the world know, and nothing happens half the time. We're missing that part of the equation. And I guess that's where we're trying to figure out here in our conversation of how to save the world between you and me. Uh, but that's the part that's missing is to do something. And I don't know the answer. I know you don't know the answer. Do you think we're getting any closer to coming up with some sort of solution? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, there's going to be people that are upset. They're going to say this is violating their constitutional rights, no matter how reasonable it may be.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think what we are hoping to look at is the interval of time between this initial 2023 accusation against the school shooter and then the actual school shooting in 2024. What happened in that interval? Was the school notified of the 2023 accusation? Did the school take any measures like additional supervision or offering counseling services or kind of monitoring this kid a little more closely? Is there something that we can do to get the parents involved in a collaborative process with the schools and perhaps counselors to be a little more hands-on, a little bit more attentive in terms of what the risks and concerns are, and also what resources are providing to these would-be school shooters when we might be able to prevent that sort of thing if intervention is taken swiftly and effectively. Now, I don't know exactly the parameters of that intervention, but I think that we can all kind of put our heads together and hopefully improve this society and prevent this from happening.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.